Hi everyone, welcome to Our Small Footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today's video is kind of a celebratory video. Today, the 30th of November, is actually my 2-year anniversary on YouTube. So 2 years ago, I took the leap and decided to start filming YouTube videos. I used Vlogmas as my, start, that's what I was going to do. I was going to use Vlogmas to do a video every day. I don't think I managed every day, but close to every day. And I was going to start off really nice and consistently, spend 12 months doing videos as often as I could, like that sort of, every day, every couple of days, and see how I went at the end. At the end of the 12 months, everything was going fairly well. I was enjoying it. I made lots of contacts and community online, and so I decided to keep on going. And now at the 2-year point, I have 10,000 subscribers. Now, I make a little bit of money from it now as well, which is beneficial for me in the long run. I always say that most of my garden was funded by you guys watching ads on my videos. So I was able to redo my whole garden based on you guys watching and the videos and watching ads and things like that. So I asked a couple of videos ago for some questions that needed to be answered for some newer viewers, that things that I haven't covered in a while. I will link a couple of videos in the cards of previous sort of Q&A, FAQ, why we did what we did, but I'm going to just briefly outline a little bit at the beginning again, make this my new intro video on my channel and things like that, and just sort of, do an update, so 2 years on, and then answer. I have a notebook with some questions here that were asked that I'm going to try and cover as well. So as said, family of 8 living off grid in Australia. The move out here was not really planned. So initially we bought the land as a weekender. We were going to use it as a bit of a weekender, a getaway, and maybe once we got to a point where we could do it, we'd retire out here as such. Not necessarily retire, we'd still work, and I'm not very good at doing nothing. So we'd definitely still be working, but not working the way we were working. But unfortunately, there's mosquitoes. It's that time of day. Unfortunately, things went downhill with a lot of things. Darryl's mental health suffered, and we had some issues with money because he couldn't work the same way that he used to work, and then I was home with 6 kids on my own and all the rest of it. Anyway, it all fell apart. The house that we were renting, we had considered buying, but we couldn't buy it, and I'm glad we didn't. So we had to move out in a hurry, and so we moved out here with very, very little. And so initially I was going to start YouTube back then. I was going to do it right from the beginning, and I just couldn't really fathom why anyone would want to watch, to be honest. So I didn't do it, and I tried to get Darryl to do some of it, but Darryl found that he wasn't very good at being natural in front of the camera. So he used to think too hard and go a little bit monotone and things like that. So that didn't work as well. So I did a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram, but I didn't really share much of anything else. And I sometimes regret that, because some of the stuff that we achieved early on and some of the memories from early on are really fantastic. I do have lots of little clips on my phone and things like that of stuff that happened, but nothing in video format, like this long format that I do this sort of stuff, which is a bit sad. So anyway, we moved out here, and it's been 5.5 years now, and it was hard initially. We had a real lack of any sort of mod cons. We still lack mod cons because that's not the lifestyle we lead, but we now have everything we need to get by, and we manage quite well, and we enjoy the lifestyle that we're leading. So anyone who's been around, if this isn't the first video you're watching, which I wouldn't think it would be, but we just had a rush of bushfires come through, so we got evacuated 3 times in a couple of days, and then we had a big bushfire on our property, but we didn't end up having to evacuate for that. We packed the car and went out and got everyone ready to go, but they stopped it, and the wind was favouring us. It was blowing it away, so we didn't end up having to evacuate. So we've had fires. We've had to stay awake in shifts because the fire was still going on the property that night and things like that. And then with it all, I ended up with an abscessed tooth, which is why I think I'm still talking a bit funny. There's still some swelling, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was. So we've had a rush of things there. We did have some bushfires in 2019 as well that we were evacuated for as well, and they came through and they came to the back back half of the property but didn't go any further. So bushfires are definitely a bit of an issue here. We've had some ups and downs with gardens and things like that, but we wouldn't trade it. This is how we're choosing to live, and we enjoy it. And some of the kids enjoy it more than others, but I think it's beneficial for them anyway. And as they get old enough and get the licenses and things like that, they can choose to do what they wish to do, and they can stay or they can go and do things elsewhere. So we currently homeschool because we had homeschooled from when they were young. The kids were, when Surreal, who is my eldest, was in the age to start going to school, I had 4 other children. Kavik wasn't born. I think I might have been pregnant with Kavik. 4 other kids who were like almost newborn twins, and then up a couple more. So getting 5 children into a car to drop 1 child off just seemed like an impossible task to do on an everyday basis. So we started homeschooling then, and we kept it going because it seems to work really well for us. And then being out here, it means less travel. Like, there is a school that goes to grade 10 in town, which is about 30-35 minutes away, and there is a bus system out on the main road, which is a bit of a walk but doable. But after year 10 they have to go to Pittsworth, I think, which is like an hour away from here, so quite an extended bus ride. And with the availability of everything online, the kids can pick and choose what they want to pursue. Surreal was talking about doing something in the dental field, so there was an anatomy and physiology university course from Duke University that was available for free to add into her current studies and things like that. So for the moment we're following along with the homeschooling, and we'll assess it as the children require it to be assessed, and we'll adjust as needed. But it means that we stay on the property most of the time. I shop every 6 weeks, so anyone who follows me knows that. I shop every 6 weeks, and I leave for 2 or 3 days to do my 6-weekly shop, and I pretty much try not to leave the property any other time unless I have a medical appointment. Darryl does most of the trips into town for food, and for like animal food, and he buys and he goes to the post office and things like that. So I have a really, really bad habit of rambling and squirreling, as I call it, and I have no idea what led into that part of that conversation. So anyone who's been around knows that this is going to ramble a little bit, because that's just the way it is. So anyway, I don't know where that was going. When I edit this I might figure it out, but by then it'll be too late, and I'm not going back to watch it right now. I'm going to lose light soon because it's like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, because I've been processing peaches all day. So there is pros and cons to living here. The pros for us far outweigh the cons. We have 20 acres, so we have the ability for the children to live on the property at a distance to us if that's what they desire, or they can go elsewhere. That's whatever works for them. But Darryl and I intend this to be our forever. This is where we intend to stay. So now there was some questions for, I think that gives enough sort of background information there to start with. The 6 kids are now nearly 8, 9, 9, 10, 12 and 16, just as a side note there. And there's 2 boys, 4 girls. 2 girls, 4 boys. I don't know why I missed that one up. So yes, that's the age of the kids at the moment, and Darryl and I both work from home, so we'll cover that. I think there's a question about that. So I have questions here. I haven't edited them too much into a list of anything, so I'm going to go through and we might just see how we go, okay? And I'll try and keep this video under about the 25-minute mark, because that sort of seems to be a good sort of a size that people will watch it without feeling like it's too long. I'd get bored, especially with my squirreling and rambling, and the fact that I'm not really showing anything but me. Like, who'd want to look at my face for 25 minutes? Not me, that's for sure. So one of the questions I got asked, which is relevant to starting out the story, was how do I feel about the workload of living off grid like this, and what were compared to what my expectations were. I honestly didn't really have much of an idea of how it was going to go. We planned to a degree, as I said, but it wasn't intended for us to move out here in such a rush in the way we did, with minimal supplies and minimal planning and things like that. So we moved out in a rush and had to sort of work as we went because we just didn't have a choice. We didn't have anywhere else to go. So we had bought this and we had a couple of open faced buildings on here. I'll put a photo in here of what the buildings look like that we just made work. So in regards to workload and expectations, I don't know. Workload was always going to be high. I had 6 children, 6 very small children at the time, and just caring for 6 children is a pretty significant workload, realistically, if you want to do it right. And then because we homeschooled, so some of the kids were a bit young for actual homeschooling, but you do your standard Play-Doh and letters and all that right from as soon as they can, communicate. So there was still some planning in that sort of sense of thing. Now, the workload now, I think the beauty of living the lifestyle that we're living is that you can adjust the workload based on what you need to do. So we have projects out our ears, some that are higher priority than others, and those projects need to be done eventually. Most of them, though, you can to a degree put off if you need to. So if there's injuries or there's sickness or there's bushfires or there's whatever else, that is the beauty of this situation, is that you can prioritize things as you need to. Now, I do some different bits of work. I do these videos, which earns me some money, and I do have to push myself sometimes to keep on going when to edit, and that it's not the video, it's not the taking the videos, it's not wanting to do it, it's the editing or the voiceovering that I find hard. It's time consuming, and I spend a lot of time doing a lot of things. So this is work. I also do transcription typing, and again, that needs to be done. If it's not done in a timeline, then I won't maintain my clients, so that's fine. Darryl does converting work for Dungeons and Dragons, so he does virtual tabletop conversions of PDFs to the actual games in Shard and Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 and things like that, for anyone who knows that sort of stuff. And again, he has timelines to get that done. So those sort of things do, to a degree, come first because we have to earn money to live. Groceries are one of our highest expense, realistically. So we don't spend a lot. We don't require a lot. We don't have to have significant income because we don't spend a lot of money. Groceries are our pretty much our highest cost. So those sort of work type things have to come first a little bit because, well, they earn us the money. And then other things happen. So there's different aspects. Like, we had to get the hothouse built, and the hothouse needed to be built before we needed to grow in it. So that was the priority at that particular point. We have a shed structure that we're redoing, which is going to be Surreal's space, because Surreal is 16 now, so she's going to move into like a little granny flat type situation. And so we have a shed structure that has walls and stuff, but we need to redo the roof and the floor and stuff that can be turned into something for her. Again, it's there in the priority, but also if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen in the near future. We bought a new above ground pool for Christmas, so there needs to be new fencing put up for the pool. Now that's higher in the priorities because they can't use the pool, we can't put the pool up until there's fencing. So you can move things around in your list as to what needs to be done. Obviously food prep, preservation, all that sort of thing is something that I do, and it is something that is required to be done promptly, because if you don't get the food preserved and that sort of thing, then it goes to waste, and we can't have that. We can't have that monetarily or just because I don't want to waste food. So that sort of stuff gets done. So the workload, that's a really hard one. And I think it would depend. Let me adjust this camera. I think it would really depend on the way you work and the way you prioritize your tasks and what your aims are in your homesteading. Like, I find it hard to call us a homestead too, so take that with a grain of salt, but obviously chicken chores need to be done, and chickens need to be looked after, and like new pens need to be built for chicks as needed, and we need to incubate them and process chickens and things like that. And again, they're required on a timeline, but it's variable and you can move other things around. I don't know, I don't find the workload excessive. I find that because you can do it on your own timeline that it works out as not being overly excessive. I don't know if I even answered that question appropriately, but hopefully that makes sense anyway. In regard, just on a side note of there, I did get asked about the free range roosters and how I was going with processing the roosters and stuff. We actually culled all the free range roosters. That's why you don't hear them as much anymore. I'm not near the chicken pens and it's getting late, so they're probably going to bed now. But we did cull all the free range roosters that were running around. So they were all processed, and that's great because they used to cause problems around the car and things like that. If you startled one of them, they might run at you or things like that, and the kids got, flapped at a few times, and the boys, and they didn't like them being around. So I'm glad that that is done, and we won't allow them to free range again next time. So the reason they were free ranging was because they were put in the pig pens and they loved it in the pig pens, but we introduced a couple of extra ones and all of a sudden none of them wanted to stay in the pig pens. So anyway, for whoever asked about those, we processed those. We still have three or four roosters in the pens that need processing. Some silver-laced Wyandottes that were surplus roosters. We don't have enough hens to keep any more roosters. We have keeping one rooster. I need to get rid of the rest. But other than that, at the moment, until the next lot of chicks age out, we won't have any roosters to process. So at the moment, all the roosters other than those 3 or 4 are sorted, and we will have to do those on a good day. So in summer, it's really hard to process roosters because of the flies and the heat. So we need to find a cool enough day to do it. So we will do that. So again, with workload and priorities here, someone asked me if there's any plans for a new kitchen and if I miss the standardized sort of, like the standard equipment and stuff. And not really. Sometimes it would be so much easier to have like a multi-tray oven or something, like a multi-shelf oven, and be able to cook plenty of trays at the same time. But in general, I get along quite fine with it. I did get asked as well the learning curve for the barbecue cooking. It's also sort of associated with that. There definitely was a learning curve with baking things in the barbecue. Things like learning that you have to lift things up off the plates. They need those upside down colanders to keep things up off the plates. Certain things need only certain burners going because if you have too much bottom heat, then you burn the bottom before the inside's cooked. Mosquitoes, sorry. And baking bread, we definitely discovered that putting them in Dutch ovens was much better than open baking because you don't get much steam in a barbecue environment because there's too much holes. It's an open environment, like it's got gas flame, open back, open front, all these vent holes, and so the bread wasn't giving the same sort of lift because of lack of steam, lack of closed space. So having the baker's ovens definitely made a difference there. But I would say that baking bread in the barbecue and other things in the barbecue definitely took me a couple of years because initially I had LPG stoves, like actual ovens, and we had 2 or 3 of them, but they all died because they're not really meant to be used in an outdoor environment like ours. And so I was using them initially because I just found the barbecue too hard. Once the last one died, I decided not to replace it, and so then it just became that I had to use the barbecue, and then we worked from there. We figured it out, and I can bake just about anything in there. I do struggle sometimes with some more fragile bakes. Sponge cakes and stuff I find really difficult because it's really hard to get that low even heat. It fluctuates too much, but most things I don't have a problem with. Had to go check the bread in the oven, and of course now I'm lost onto where I was. Missing standard ovens, no. And learning curve, it took a while. It did take a while. It took a couple of years to get barbecue baking well and good. So, new kit in regards to a new kitchen. We need to buy what I'm calling a double carport. Just a flat skillion roof, 6x6 structure that is going to go attach onto the current roof structure, the current patio structure, and it's going to go over the kitchen, and it's going to give me an extra 2.5 meters more than what the kitchen currently is. And the plan is to be able to wall that in for a pantry, so all the shelving and stuff can go inside a room and we don't have to worry about dust and mice and things like that. That's the plan anyway. But the problem is the cheapest I can find is about $2,800, and that's cheap. probably better off going the like $4.5 grand ones, and we just never really have the ability to get that much cash together at one time. We're doing okay. We get everything we need. We eat well and all the rest of it, but getting bulk cash amounts together is challenging for me. So and then we've had Christmas come up and things like that, and so we're not getting there at the moment. But eventually the plan is double carport 6x6 to go next to the current patio structure that will, because at the moment there's only a temporary roof over the top and it's just got plastic blinds, cafe blinds over some canvas, and it leaks. So we can't have anything further away from a certain distance or to get leaked on and things like that. So, you know, yes, there is plans for a new kitchen. Not really a new kitchen, just rearranging the one that we currently have and the ability to create a pantry. And once we can create a pantry, we can move the food shelves from the top of the house that are up on the top of the house, and that top of the house can be turned into extra living space for the kids. People ask me all the time about kitchen tours. Yeah, nah. You don't want to see it. The stainless steel bench that I do most of my prep at, 95% of my prep at, is kept spotless because that's where I do my food prep. The cooktops and like the camp chef and stuff, they're outdoor LPG cooktops. They're never particularly clean. I don't cook directly on my barbecue, so the barbecue isn't particularly clean either because I only bake in it. And it's all on decking timber, which always looks scrubby. But the whole point is that I can flush it with water and give it an outdoor broom and clean it up, and I really enjoy being able to do that. We have concrete pads underneath all the cook equipment in case anything falls off the cook equipment, and underneath the smoker and things like that. I killed my smoker too. I don't know if I mentioned that. I killed my smoker. I'm really sad. I don't know what I'm going to do about that at the moment, but anyway. And all the shelving's always dirty because it's exposed and we live in sand, so everything's always sandy, so I always have to clean the tops of everything, which is why everything's stored in glass jars, and everything's, you know, clean as in like all the food products are clean, but everything it lives in isn't necessarily clean. So eventually, once I get the kitchen redone, then maybe I can do a tour because we'll have more walls as such. Probably still not this mosquito, probably not solid walls because I don't want solid walls, it's too hot, but like shade cloth type walls, which will reduce the dust and things like that. So but at the moment it's just unpleasantly dusty and not very well set out either because we're limited space. So that stainless steel bench is the prime spot in my kitchen, which is why the camera's always pointed at it. So no new kitchen as such, just a little bit better layout and a little bit more space is the plan. In regards to, I get asked a lot about kitchen experience and my cooking experience and things like that, and I think this video is already running way past what I wanted it to do, but this is what I do. I ramble. I don't have a lot of kitchen experience in like training as such. I have worked in sports canteens and cafes and things like that, and I used to work in the pub kitchen in town here when we first moved out, before it was a couple of years ago. COVID closed everything down and I didn't go back because the shifts were only like 2-3 hour shifts and it's a long way to go, and I shouldn't drive at night with my eyesight and things like that, so it didn't end up continuing on. I quite enjoyed it when I did it though, but no formal training. I've never done any formal cooking training or anything else. I think it's just that I do a lot of it and I enjoy it, and therefore I research it and I watch other people do it and I do it more, and I must just have a good palate for tasting things and a good sense of what goes with what. My grandmother lived with us when I was a child because my mum was a single mum, and she was fairly crippled with arthritis. She had pretty severe arthritis, and so from when I was young, guinea fowl is saying hi. From when I was young, my grandmother would sit at the dining table and she would direct me in the kitchen about how to cook a meal. So she taught me a lot in just directing me, and we didn't have a lot of money, and she was used to feeding. She had 4 children back when they were young, and she lived in, you know, Depression era type times, and so she's used to making food from nothing, and I learned a lot about how to make food work, how to make leftovers work, like, you know, your perpetual soups where you make a stew one night and then the next night you just add a few more veggies and a bit more meat and you've got a stew for dinner again the next night. and things like that. So I think I learned how to blend some flavors there. She used to make sausage rolls, which were an inspiration for me, having made sausage rolls as an adult. She used to make sausage rolls. She used bread and stuff in them as well, and things like that, and I've adapted it to suit us. But she taught me a lot about the basics of food, because I had to cook. There was no other choice. Mum worked full time. I had a younger sister, but she was 6 years younger than me, and Nana just couldn't stand at stoves and stuff anymore. So she had a stool, and she used to just direct me. So I think that's where it started. But then I always liked food. I enjoy good food. I've never had a particularly huge appetite for food, to be honest. My size belies that, but I'm not a big eater. I'm very good at keeping my treats paced. Just joining me for the evening. This is because there's no roosters. I have guinea fowl. Enough! So no formal experience, just generalized learning and a desire to continue to learn and to try new foods and things like that. And I much prefer my own cooking to someone else's. Part of that might come from the kids having had allergies too, because Surreal, my firstborn, was allergic to calcium milk protein, but she also had intolerances to gluten, wheat, soy, a bunch of things when she was little, and we had to really restrict her diet quite heavily, and I had to learn to make a lot of things that had none of that stuff in it. So that might have been another push towards it, is the allergies in the children. And then just having kids and not wanting to go anywhere. And I remember when we lived metro, we might have KFC for lunch or something, and you're talking like $80 to $100 back then for 8 people to eat KFC. Like, that's like, yeah, the amount of food I can cook for $80. So yeah, no formal experience, just generalized learning and enjoyment and desire to learn. And I love to bake and things. I very rarely eat what I bake, but that's lucky that I have 6 kids to eat. So I might bake a whole cake and I'll have a sliver while it's warm, and then the rest is for the kids. So, and that's fine because I have 6 kids who can eat it. So someone asked how long we've been at the property. As I said, 5.5 years we've been at the property. So that's, pretty good. Time span, we're pretty happy with what we've done in that time. I would have loved to have done more, but I'm still pretty happy with what we've done. I got asked about garden experience when we moved. Minimal. Mum used to work in a nursery when I was a child, but I don't really remember much of that. And she liked to landscape garden when we lived out when my grandmother lived with us, but it was landscape gardening as in natives in low-lying landscape, not sort of veggies or anything. Realistically, I only started food gardening once we moved out here. Again, just a desire to do it, a desire to learn, a desire to grow food for myself and things like that. And it's still very much an ongoing learning process, which I say cooking and everything still is too. I always say I don't feel qualified to teach anyone anything because I'm still learning, because every day I learn something new, or I have new problems to solve, or whatever else. So gardening is still very much something that I am figuring out and getting there. So this is probably our 3rd year of gardening here, 4th year of gardening here, but we've had a couple of really big fails. The gardens are doing really well this year so far, but we're still having our issues. So it's all a learning process. I got asked about stress levels, like, is there less stress out here? And there definitely is. There is the stress of disasters like fires, and there's still the stress of prioritizing tasks and feeling like I'm not getting enough done and things like that. But in general, the stress out here is a lot better. I was getting hospitalized quite regularly when I lived in Brisbane because of my chronic pain conditions would flare up, and most of that, I believe, was the stress of looking after the kids by myself, not having Darryl around, worrying about the money for the businesses, and I was running payroll for everyone and all the rest of it. And I truly believe that the ability to step back and to take a break if I need to, not that I do very often. I'm not very good at stopping. I don't know if anyone's noticed that. I'm not very good at not doing anything. But the ability to the option of that has made a huge difference, I believe, to the stress levels and all the rest of it. There was the issue that the lack of stress and the lack of direction and that sort of threw Darryl into a spiral when we moved out here. Darryl had pretty much a complete mental breakdown. It was tough, and that was, I think it was coming on even from when we weren't out here, and that the relief of being out here was part of the thing. And maybe we were lucky that it happened once we were out here, because if it had have happened while we still owned businesses in Brisbane and while we were still trying to pay huge rents and everything else, then we would have been in a lot worse position. So the stress now is different to what it was. 6 kids who are now getting older have caused stress of their own. And there, as I said, there's the stress of not feeling like we get enough done and things like that. But at the same time, we have the ability to slow down. We have the choice to take it easy when we need to. And that is a wonderful thing. What else have we got? I had a question about water and annual rainfall. So our water is collected, these mosquitoes. Our water is collected from a community bore and a standpipe in town. We pay for the standpipe in town. It's about $3 for 1,000 litres. And the community bore is free, but it is non-potable water. Non-potable, potable, whatever you want to call it. We use the bore water for the animals and the gardens, and we tend to use the standpipe water for our drinking water tank. And then we have rainwater that goes into that tank as well. We have filter systems on everything. We have a carbon silver filter on the house so that we can make sure that no sort of anything like Giardia and stuff like that doesn't come through the tanks into our drinking water. We also use Berkey's or Proper filters for drinking water as well, but that's more a convenience thing. You can fill them up 3 times a day and that's drinking water, rather than kids turning taps on and off all the time. And we have a set of filters off from the IBC to the house tank, and then from the house tank to everything else. So we have that option. In regards to annual rainfall, I keep a pretty strict record of our weather, and we have had as low as 500 mils in a year and as high as 800 mils in a year. So between that, so say 600 mils a year. But the biggest problem is that it all tends to fall at the same time. We have a bit of a wet season in February. And one other point, which I was going to check the chart before I came out and I forgot, but there's sort of 2 points where we get a whole lot of rain, and then it makes it hard to catch it all because it's all at the same time, and the rest of the time is dry. So, you know, the rainfall's not great here, to be honest, but it's still better than it is in other places. So there's that. What else did I get asked? Did we plan a large family? No. I don't know why. We don't come from large families, either of us. Darryl has 2 siblings. I have a half-sister and a stepbrother. And yeah, don't know. So neither of us came from large families with, 2 parents and lots of kids. So Darryl would have been happy to stop, I think, fairly early on, and I kind of pushed keep on going, but don't know, this is just what it ended up being. I always wanted to be mum. People used to say, what do you want to be? You could be anything you want to be, and I always wanted to be mum. And it was back when time when I was sort of said, well, why would you waste your life just being a mum? But this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I enjoy doing, and I am super, super grateful that I have the opportunity to earn money and parent my children myself and homeschool them and all the rest of it, and give them what they need, and also exist, and having YouTube helps with that too, because there is the interaction with people for me, which is nice. I'm not much of a face-to-face person. I'm not real good at going out and putting myself out there in person. I do fine when I do it, but it's not my thing. This whole online interaction works really well for me. And then along with that, I got asked about alone time with Darryl, if we ever get any time alone. No. We only have a 5-seater vehicle, so we can't all go anywhere at the same time. And the kids aren't old enough to leave behind for any span of time. I think once we've left Surreal in charge with the other kids because we had to do something, but it was like 15 minutes down the road. I can't remember what it was. Someone broke down somewhere or something. I don't remember. But no. The last time Darryl and I had time alone was for his 40th birthday. And he is 46. So 6 years ago, which was just before we came out here. I took him away and he flew a helicopter for his 40th birthday. I'll try and find a photo and put it up here. So we stayed for a few nights in a it was the rainforest treetop resort, something along those lines. And mum and my sister, or mum and my aunt, or someone watched the kids for us for those couple of nights. That's the last time. So we were discussing that and the fact that Kavik, my youngest, will be 18 the year I turn 50. So maybe the year I turn 50, we will go away for a week somewhere. He'd really like to take me to New Zealand because he's Kiwi. He'd really like to take me to New Zealand and show me stuff. So maybe. That's 9 years away though. So, you know, it would be lovely. And we very much would, I think we would appreciate something like what we did for his 40th much more now than we did then. But, you know, one day we'll get there. What else? Someone was asking about the kids liking everything that I cook. I don't cater to the kids massively because I just don't feel like I should. But I do to a degree, and more than some. So things like we make pizzas and everyone gets their own pizza, and I always ask them what they want on it. So they have the basics that we always have, you know, salami, corn, bacon, some sort of meat and things like that. But then there's optional anchovies, optional mushrooms, and that sort of thing. So to a degree they are catered to in that sense. They are allowed to have opinions, they are allowed to have likes and dislikes, but at the same time, if I'm serving up meat, mash and veg, I'm not going to pick out certain veg. You have the mixed veg and you eat it, and that's what's served. And if you don't eat it, then you don't get anything else. That's sort of basically it. So if you don't finish what's on your plate, don't ask me for anything else, because you're obviously not that hungry. But I tend not to serve them things that they're not going to want to eat either. And if it's something new, we might try it for a lunch rather than a dinner, and then that way they can help themselves to something else. And then if they like it, then we serve it for a dinner or something like that. I'm pretty lucky though, and I think a lot of that has been work. Like I don't think I'm just lucky in general, but I've fed the kids a pretty diverse diet right from the word go. We did baby-led weaning from the beginning. The kids have all had cow's milk protein allergies, so we've had to vary some of the things that we make, and I think that partly is a good thing because it means that they're used to those different flavors. But I also don't like food waste, so to a degree, eat it or don't have anything else is sort of my motto. But I also don't tend to put things in front of them that I don't think they'll eat, because that's a waste of my time and theirs. So if I'm making something that I really think they won't eat for dinner, then I might make it for Darryl and I, and they can try it, and then I'll cook them bolognese or, you know, something like that, so that way they've got a meal that I know they like, and then they can try this other meal, and if it appeals to them, we can make it for them next time, you know, that sort of thing. But I am pretty lucky that they're all pretty good. And if they refuse to eat a meal, then they refuse to eat a meal. And as I said, that's fine, but you don't get anything else. Within reason, obviously. They're all old enough now that they understand that consequence. Like the youngest one is almost 8. Like if he was a toddler and he didn't like what I cooked, then I'd make him a sandwich. But at 8, he understands that this is dinner and I've spent time to cook this, and this is food that I don't want wasted, and if you don't like it, then cool. I generally give in with fruit though, so, you know, they eat what they eat, and then an hour later they can have an apple, yeah, whatever. So I'm not too much of a hard ass on that, so, you know, not necessarily greatest advice, but at the same time, my kids will try most anything, and they eat most anything, and so I've obviously done something right somewhere. Darryl used to be pretty picky too, and a lot of his was food that he had been served when he was younger. Like he didn't want risotto. I once said I'm going to make risotto, and he's like, ugh. And then he tried my risotto, and he's like, I really like this. And I said, well, I didn't think you wouldn't, because there's nothing in there that you wouldn't like. But the thing is that if you've had a bad one, then you've got a bad experience about it. So I think part of that, the kids too, is the stuff that I give them that's new. Most of it they like, and so they're not afraid to try other new stuff. So I think that helps. I don't know. I'm no expert, I have 6 children who have pretty good appetites, who eat pretty well, and that's all I'm talking from there. So I can't give, strict advice on that, but that's how it works in this house. And on that note, someone asked me about chicken advice and starting out with chickens. Whilst we have a pretty good chicken network set up, like we have a good range of chickens, we get plenty of eggs, our chickens are pretty healthy, we have different pens and all the rest of it, I'm not an expert. We started off small, we had a small tunnel with some ducks and some chickens, and we've just expanded from there. And I don't do anything fancy. I'd really like to get into fermented feed and composting in place in the pens and things like that, but those are those sorts of tasks that I talked about earlier that are wants, not necessarily needs, and so they get deprioritized to make sure that we're not overwhelming and we're not having burnout, because they're not necessary. We can afford to just buy animal feed, so we buy animal feed and we buy the right variety for them, and that means that we get plenty of eggs. So again, there's things that I'd like to do differently there, but I don't necessarily have the ability to, or the timeline, and that I would like to do better. Advice in regards to starting out with chickens, I'm happy to answer any direct questions that you have, but at the same time, we're still fairly new with it as well. Chicken keeping, I still Google, I still have a friend who I contact whenever something goes a bit odd and say, so what would you do in this situation? So that I've got someone else to bounce things off to. But all I can say is that chickens are lovely and we love having chickens, and I really adore having eggs. That we get, a dozen eggs a day, and it is amazing to have the ability to have those eggs at hand and usable. I will say, if you're not intending to breed and you're not intending to hatch eggs, don't buy a rooster, because roosters can be painful, like they can be aggressive and all the rest of it, but less that, because there are some lovely roosters out there, and more that, especially if you're living somewhere where it's warm. So in summer, our eggs sit on, they just sit on the bench, so you go and collect the eggs, and we have buckets that are numbered so that we know how old each batch of eggs is on the bench, and we use the oldest ones first. But within 3 or 4 days sometimes of them sitting on because they can last a month on a bench, but in the middle of summer, within 3 or 4 days of them sitting on the bench, because they are all fertilized, because we have roosters with all of our hens, it means that you're cracking eggs that have started developing, which can really turn people off eggs. I don't have a problem with it now. I always crack into a bowl before I pour it into anything else, and it's fine, but it can be a real turn off with eggs. So my biggest point of advice is, if you're getting chickens for eggs and you're not intending to breed or hatch out your own chickens, just don't get a rooster. That's going to be my big chicken starting tip. But other than that, I'm still learning. Like everything else. And then we're going to end this because this video is so long. We're going to end up that with the one of the final questions, which was how to stay motivated. Now, I have high motivation. I don't know. I think you either have it innately or you don't. And so for me to advise someone on how to stay motivated isn't necessarily going to work, because I think I just am that kind of person. I don't have to work at it. I find sometimes that because I live with people who aren't very motivated, that it can really pull my motivation down, and I have to work through that to a degree. But generally speaking, I like to do things. I'm not very good at doing nothing, and even when I'm sitting doing nothing, I tend to read. So I can read a novel a day, even doing all that I do. So even with all these videos and all the food prep and everything else, I can read a novel a day, because every minute of downtime, that's what I do. I have my phone with Kindle on it, and I just read and read and read. So I don't stop. I don't do nothing. I don't. It's thing. But I think lists are a good thing. So that's one way that I motivate other people, is lists of things. Like, we need to do this to be able to do this to be able to do this. It doesn't always work though. Timelines, again, sometimes works, but sometimes doesn't either, because there's things that I say I need it done by the 1st of December, for example, and it's the 1st of December tomorrow and it's not done. So, I don't know. To be honest, my motivation is to progress. Like, I want to progress on the property. I want to progress on my life. I want to better myself. I want to provide the best life possible for my children. I want to provide the best life possible for my animals. I want to show everyone else, YouTube and everyone else, that I can successfully complete things. I want to, I don't know, it's hard, that one. That's a real hard sort of a thing. And I'm not religious personally. I follow no religion whatsoever. Darryl attends church, and he is actually looking at studying theology and potentially going on to become, it's Anglican. I don't know what they're called. Are they just priests? I'm not sure. I used to study a lot of religions when I was young. I used to take it all in because I wanted to learn, and but I get them all confused now. And I sometimes think that it would be nice to have a religious background, because then my purpose would be that I'd have the religion as a purpose. And I think that it may help Darryl to have purpose by having religion, helping him be purposeful. But for me, that purpose, it's inbuilt. I don't know. Yeah, my motivation and my purpose and everything else, they are just within me. They are, and I've been like it my whole life. I don't like sitting still. I don't like doing nothing. I don't like being idle. I don't like not doing something that helps in some other way. I'm not very good at stopping. I also suffer from chronic health conditions that mean that when I do stop, sometimes it's really hard to get going again. And I know that I'm in groups, a few different groups for trigeminal neuralgia, which is one of my main concerns. And there's a lot of people in there who they can't keep going, so they don't. And then they spiral down and they never get going again. And I don't want to do that. So I push myself to keep going, because that is the way to get through. If I keep on going and I keep on pushing and I keep on working towards whatever my next priority is, then that's what works. That's what gets me where I need to go, and that's what motivates me, is the completion and successful endeavors. Like, being successful at something helps to motivate me to keep on going. Sometimes being unsuccessful at something helps me to keep on going as well, because then I want to prove that I could do it. So I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, this has been one hell of a ramble, because this particular clip of video is like 30 minutes long, and I don't know how long the other one was. But I hope that the people who normally watch, and that's who this video is for, the people who watch every video and comment on every video, and I am so thankful and so grateful for everyone. To get 10,000 subscribers in a 2-year span is unfathomable, and it's still unfathomable to even think that there is 10,000 people who have watched a video and sat there and gone, I think I'll subscribe to this chick, because it's amazing, and I'm just grateful and thank you. And hopefully I don't need, well, I sit there and say hopefully I keep on getting bigger, but at the same time I don't really need to. We don't need much more than what we've got. Like, we're doing okay, and I'm okay with that. So, but thank you so much, and I will see you on the next video, which hopefully will be tomorrow, because we're going to start Vlogmas. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it yet, but the plan is daily videos for December. There's going to be some food prep videos in there as well that are my normal. So one day it'll still be a video a day, but it just might be a food prep, meal prep type video. And then the other times it'll be vlogging from what we did with the kids. So, we're going to put Christmas trees up, and we're going to do Christmas crafts, and we're going to create garlands. I've got some, and we're going to do some tie dyeing, and of course I've got a grocery trip in the middle there too. So it's going to be a mix of videos, and nothing is planned. So I know a lot of people sit there and plan out their 24 days of Vlogmas or whatever else. Yeah, no, that's not happening here. You get what you get, but the hope is to do it every day. And not only is that just fun, but it helps the YouTube algorithm and all that. And Christmas time, the ad rates go up for for YouTube, so you get a better dollar per thousand rate and all the rest of it. So it's going to benefit me, and then whoever wants to watch it'll benefit them as well. And I hope you all come along with that Christmas. In saying that, though, I doubt many people are watching to the end. We do a lot of Christmas baking in Christmas in December, and I do gingerbread and you know, all sorts of fun things. But if there's anything that you make at Christmas time that you really enjoy, especially if it's something that is regional to you, put a link or the name of it in the comments, and I will try and add that, to find something that works for us and add that in, because the kids love baking and love cooking, and I really enjoy doing new things, especially around Christmas time, because it's an excuse to bake, and it's an excuse to try new stuff, and that sort of thing. So for anyone who happens to watch to the end of the video, that would be great. So thank you guys, and I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.